Hello everyone and welcome to yet another episode of RetroVival. In the first episode, I spoke about one of my favourite games from my childhood, The Simpsons Hit and Run. In today's episode, I'm going back a bit earlier to the first game I ever completed. Where some people experienced the 3D platformer for the first time, with that ever-resourceful plumber on N64, other people like myself had a little purple dragon on the PlayStation 1. Spyro made his grand debut on PlayStation on September 9th, 1998, with Spyro the Dragon. The game was published by Sony Computer Entertainment, but it was owned by Universal Interactive, and it was developed by just a little indie studio known as Insomniac. Yeah, that Insomniac. The game saw Spyro having to travel across worlds to save his fellow dragons, who had been frozen in place by the game's villain Gnasty Gnork. But when Spyro succeeded and needed a break from heroing, he found himself on a collision course with a whole new set of characters, worlds, and enemies. And the setup for his second adventure on PlayStation, and in my opinion, his greatest adventure in the entire franchise. Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage released on November 2nd, 1999, but here in Europe it was actually known as Spyro 2 Gateway to Glimmer. Apparently Sony Europe just thought Spyro Gateway to Glimmer sounded better. I absolutely love the title because obviously it's the one I grew up with. I understand what some people say though, where it's like Ripto's Rage technically makes more sense because Gateway to Glimmer just refers to the first level of the game. But for me it has a lot of nostalgia. So while Spyro is planning to go on a holiday to Dragon Springs with Sparks, in a level called Glimmer, a new group of characters are working to bring a dragon to their world in order to fend off a dangerous new villain. That's where we meet an anxious cheetah named Hunter, a feisty faunus named Elora, and a rat. Man. Guinea pig. I don't know what he is, to be honest. He's called a professor. He's a nice lad. He's just some form of rat or something. I don't know what he is. Anyway, back on topic. Spyro gets dragged into their world, and that's where we meet the villains of the adventure. Crush, Gulp, and their boss, Ripto. To put it simply, Ripto's a small little man with a bit of a messiah complex, and he wants to take over and rule all of Avalar, which is the world where this game takes place. So you can imagine Ripto's not too impressed that the gang has brought a dragon to Avalar to fend him off. And that's really where our adventure truly starts. Glimmer is a fun and memorable way to start the game. It introduces us to our cast, villains, and mechanics that we'll be using throughout the game. It does a good job early on in teaching you that you need to return to levels as you progress throughout the story, with the ladder halfway through the level showing you that you can actually climb it once you know how. It introduces you to this tax collecting piece of He's a bear called Moneybags, and get used to seeing him because for every bridge, wall, and ability you need to learn, this posh, wallet-draining furball will be there to take all your precious gems in return. You'll learn about the talismans, which are one of the collectibles in the game. All you've got to do to get the talismans is just get to the end of the level. The other collectibles are the orbs. Each level has a few of these, and you get them by completing different quests and minigames within the level. This could be anything from just helping fend off a few annoying enemies, to playing ice hockey with a Yeti. Once you finish the level, you'll reach our first hub world, Summer Forest. And I don't know how to describe it, but you know how some games have that kind of relaxing and cozy feel to them at times? The hub worlds in this game do just that. They're like these zen areas with really lovely music and aesthetics. You get to see and interact with all the characters, travel through portals to all the different levels, learn new abilities like diving underwater or climbing from this piece of It's got a very light Metroidvania feel to it when it comes to unlocking new abilities and accessing new areas within previous levels and hub worlds you've visited. Eventually you'll get to the other hub worlds called Autumn Plains and Winter Tundra. Each one has their own unique feel and vibe to them. They really nailed these areas in the game. The levels and its locations are really diverse. You could be helping a bunch of monks fend off a Yeti in one map, saving a bunch of turtles from some angry duck-looking thing, or helping a bunch of sculptors whose own idols have come to life and are taking over their temple in another. Each of these characters and worlds have a lot of personality and humour to them. The only real criticism I can give is some of the stuff kind of got lost when the game was remade for the Reignited Trilogy. Small things like the monk's chants just wasn't as memorable or fun as the original. Other than that, the Reignited version of the game is fantastic. The abilities in the game are fun too. Some of them, like climbing and swimming, are permanent, but then you find temporary abilities that make you run really fast, fly without restrictions, shoot explosive fireballs, freeze enemies, or just launch yourself across big gaps. They're always fun little things that just change up the gameplay briefly. The game features a few flight-only levels which will involve you having to deal with a number of different objectives within a time limit. These levels can actually be kind of challenging enough until you know how to do them and understand the best pattern to follow. These were definitely the levels that had me throwing temper tantrums when I was a kid. Every now and then you'll have to deal with a boss, with 2 being mini-bosses and the other 3 being main bosses, Crush, Gulp and Ripto. You'll challenge one of those 3 at the end of each hub world once you've gathered enough talismans. Boss fights are fun but simple. It's usually just avoiding where the enemy is targeting and shooting something at them. They're fun set pieces that cap off each world in the game. The first 2 involve Ripto individually setting his minions Crush and Gulp on you, and the final one is a battle with Ripto over a burning lava pit. He's flying around in a mount, and you use infinite flight to take the fight to the skies. In the OG version of the game, the lad goes out like he just fell into a lava pit in Minecraft. There's no fanfare, no final speech, just incinerated on the spot. I spoke recently about Astrobot, and I really feel like it's one of the few games since Spyro 2 that's given me that same feeling. When 3D platformers hit right, they're one of the most enjoyable, relaxing and satisfying games to play. I always find it strange though, because going through games like Spyro, Astro and so on, I want to find every orb, or bot, or whatever the collectible is. Whereas in games like Assassin's Creed, and other open world games with tons of completionist stuff too, I find myself getting burnt out really quickly when I try to do the same. There's something about the 3D platformer genre that's able to manage these kind of collectibles in a much more satisfying and less tedious way. Of the 3 Spyro PS1 games, Spyro 2 will always be my favourite, followed by Spyro the Dragon, and then, I'll be honest, very far after that, Spyro Year of the Dragon. That one just didn't hit for me, unfortunately. 1 had such a great foundation, and 2 evolved on it. 3 just felt like a big mini-games game to me. That one was the most difficult platinum for me out of the 3. It didn't work for me, unfortunately. Characters like Spyro stick with you. I remember when the Crash Insane trilogy was announced, I had family members who haven't played games in years talking to me about them, because they seen an advertisement on Facebook or on the telly. The same happened when Spyro Reignited Trilogy was announced. I had so many people say, I swear, that they always looked like that before they looked up footage of the originals. Both remakes did a brilliant job making those games look like how we remembered them looking back in the day. Banjo's another great example of a series from this era that would make for a fantastic remake in the same style, if they put the effort into it. And then if that goes well, we could get a new game in the series. Nintendo are big fans of remakes, but it's wild to me that they've remade stuff like Paper Mario and Super Mario RPG, but they still haven't remade Mario 64. Spyro is long overdue a new game, and if you've seen my Astrobot video, I went on a whole chapter on this for characters in Limbo like Spyro, Sly Cooper, Crash and more. So check that out if you want to hear more on this topic. I really do hope Xbox eventually sees the value in Spyro, along with Crash and Banjo, and just gives them the great new entries in the series that they deserve. Toys for Bob, who did the Spyro Reignited Trilogy and Crash Bandicoot 4, have been allowed to go independent by Xbox, but they're still working with them on a new title. I'm looking forward to whatever they do announce, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hoping it'll mark the return of our little purple friend. And that does it for another edition of RetroVival. Let me know in the comment section below which of the PS1 Spyro games is your favourite, or maybe you prefer the later PS2 entries. And if you'd like, let me know what you thought of the video too. This has been RetroVival. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.